everybody, it's Que Golazo time. Enough of North America, enough of Europe, enough of Asia. This is about CONMEBOL, South America World Cup Qualifiers, the toughest, most intense matches during the international window. I am not lying. Trust me when I say these are the hardest games to play. And we have my man, Thomas Rongen, coming in to break down all the action. Stay right here because here we go. Y arriba, Peru. Welcome back to Que Golazo. I am so happy, everybody. So happy to have my partner in crime from CBS Sports HQ, the legendary Thomas Rongen. TR, welcome to Que Golazo. Your first time. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, listen, Luis, I've worn this. And by the way, this is gold, all right? The gold standard of podcasts. I'm entering a new realm with you right now. Si, senor. Mucho appreciated.
I love it. And absolutely, just like your jacket, you are a golden welcome to this show, my friend. And just like the podcast, as you know, we're going to go off today on CONMEBOL, South American World Cup Qualifiers. Here we are entering the final window of the year. It's a really big one because once these games are over, they have to wait all the way until spring to come back. So momentum is closed. Confidence can often be closed. And, you know, if there's anybody better to join me to talk about this, it's TR himself. Thomas, let's just begin with the big boys. Brazil and Argentina. They both started perfectly with 2 wins out of 2. Let's begin with Brazil. Brazil host Venezuela to begin with, and then they go away to Uruguay. So how do you make their return to CONMEBOL action? How do you see it? Can anybody stop Brazil at this point?
Yes, I think that as we both know that the South American World Cup qualifiers is not a sprint. And I mean, look at Argentina. Argentina didn't win their first game in the 2018 World Cup qualifying until the 4th game, by the way. They're sitting at 6 points, just like Brazil. They're perfect, but you know, Brazil is dealing with some injuries. And where's the creative hub coming from without Neymar and Coutinho? I think that's a problem. They've stabilized themselves under him defensively. Have found a way to, to make sure that they don't give up a lot of goals. So they don't need many, although they scored quite a few. And if we look at new wave players like Plata, Richarlison, Lautaro Martinez, Betancourt, the old guard, really, again, we're pulling the strings, including Neymar, Luis Suarez, Vidal, Sanchez, and Falcao for Colombia scoring a goal late as well. So I think that TJ is going to look at not an easy game, but a game that if there's one game right now you can afford maybe going without Neymar and Coutinho, it's Venezuela that hasn't scored yet, that doesn't have a point. Rondon is back. Herrera is suspended, so I think that you look at this here. The most important player, in my opinion, has become Douglas Luiz. He's balanced out and allowing Lodi to go forward. I think they looked at the Belgium game, Luiz, in the World Cup and said, okay, if we want to get to the final of the next World Cup, where can we get better? And all of a sudden you see Luiz next to Casemiro, who, by the way, won't be there. So they got another void in midfield. But I still expect this team to get a W. And then the tough one, obviously, is on the road against Uruguay next.
Yeah, absolutely. You made a very good point about Douglas Luiz. Aston Villa's Douglas Luiz, by the way, who will be doing a little bit extra because Casemiro, as you mentioned, not here because of COVID-19 positive results. The other one, actually, Alisson is back as well, and Gabriel Jesus. So that's going to be a big one for Brazil. Let's talk about Argentina. You briefly mentioned them. They started well, and it wasn't easy. Ecuador look a little bit better. They won that one. Away at La Paz is never easy. And now this time around, they're at home to Paraguay. And then they play their second game against my Peru, away at Peru. I don't think it's going to be 2 easy games. And the funny thing about this one, TR, the first one, when they play at Paraguay, Paraguay hasn't lost in Buenos Aires since 1973. Yeah. That's kind of crazy. How do you see this game, especially Argentina?
Yeah, as you said, 6 points, 2 narrow wins, but they didn't win their first game in last qualifying till the 4th one. So they're in the driver's seat. Lautaro Martinez scores. Joaquin Correa comes off the bench and gives them a lift as well. I think right now, Ocampos, because of his incredible work rate, both for Sevilla and for Argentina, has been huge for them because it's allowed Messi some freedom and don't have the defensive responsibility. Again, no Dybala, no Aguero, Di Maria back in, who, by the way, is in form for PSG. And you know what? Lucas Alario from Bayern Leverkusen, who scored 7 goals. Is he a guy that could feature in this game? And as you said, Paraguay with Berizzo, their new coach from Argentina, 4 points, by the way. Bielsa's former assistant. My only concern is it's a bold approach. Is that within the Paraguayan DNA? They're normally reactive. They like a low defensive line. And with Berizzi, they've shown some signs of life, which is pretty interesting. It makes this matchup really, really intriguing.
Yeah, such a good point. They're usually so reactive. That's why Paraguay really shocked me in the first 2 matches, because they were nothing but proactive. They were just in your face. They should have beaten Peru, I really think, in that 2-0 result. And then they got another good win. Listen, one more question about Argentina, because we got all the time in the world. This isn't CBS Sports HQ, coach. We can have a chat here. Here's my question for you. I got 2, actually. The first one is Papu Gomez. I mean, he's such a good player for Atalanta, playing well. Do you think that he, you mentioned Eladio, but do you think that he can also be a pivotal part of this team, especially Scaloni looking to push up and just alleviate a lot of the pressure from Lionel Messi?
Yeah, and that's a great point, because in Papu Gomez, you have another player that can pull the strings out of different positions. He's a hard worker as well, which you need next to Messi, who doesn't have great defensive responsibilities, which is fine for the best player in the world. I would do the same thing. I did the same thing with El Pibe Valderrama. I had to convince, by the way, the rest of my team to buy into the fact that if the ball turns over, we got to work a little bit more harder, because El Pibe will not take part of it. But when we win it, guys, in transition going forward, he can be deadly. We had a great year, so it was an easy sell for me. But that's what coaches are looking at Barcelona and Argentina. How can we convince other superstars to buy into the defensively? There's reasons why Dybala and Messi haven't been on the same page. And maybe that's the same reason why you don't see Papu Gomez and Messi starting on the same team, because maybe you have too many luxury players. And Argentina has been very pragmatic, too, under their new coach, Scaloni. They've bought into defending. And I think the most important player is Paredes. Paredes has given them some defensive stability, so to speak, for a team that's not very athletic, doesn't have great speed defensively, gets caught in defensive transitions quite often. But under Paredes, they've been pretty darn good. Can Almiron on the day create some problems for the Argentinian back four, which is still the weakest link of this team? But going back to Papu Gomez, I would love to see him. But Papu Gomez gets the ball. He looks up, he goes, where are my 2 front runners from Atalanta that normally, are in fuego? So that's an interesting question and an interesting puzzle for Scaloni to figure out going forward. How can you get your best 11? And if that happens to be Gomez and Messi on the field at the same time and be successful?
I love that about Valderrama, by the way. That's awesome. The other question about Argentina, I was wondering, is can Lautaro Martinez and Messi work together, do you think? It's just impossible to think of Lautaro Martinez to be on the bench for me. I just love what he offers, but obviously I understand what happens when you have a player like La Pulga being part of this Albiceleste side. But can they work together? That's the question. Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the last few years, there's a reason why Lautaro Martinez has been pushed by Messi within the Barcelona locker room, so to speak, to bring him in there. Which means during their time with the Argentina national team, there has been obviously an interesting chemical development between those 2 players. A younger player that's still learning, that struggled a little bit early on. Obviously, Lukaku has been the big man for his club, but he's proven over and over again that he's a player, one of the best number 9s in the world. And again, is Scaloni willing to put 2 good players on the field at the same time? I think that Lautaro Martinez will start in this game, will score. I'm not saying will score again, but is probably a guy that can unlock defenses with his great runs in the final third. And if you look at the final third, best passer in the game, it's Messi, and he needs a station up front that he can play with.
Yeah.
Without Aguero not being there, Lautaro Martinez to me is the number 9 for Argentina going forward.
Yeah, absolutely, especially with the Aguero absence. All right, let's move on. Brazil, Argentina looking perfect as they begin this. We mentioned Paraguay. The one above Paraguay right now is Colombia with a win and a draw. Colombia, TR, they're so great to look at on paper. They're beautifully creative. But as we saw in that result against Chile, it took some questionable refereeing and a Radamel Falcao stoppage time goal. Falcao, El Tigre, is not going to be part of this window. And Colombia, they're great, but their defensive issues worry me. And when we look at their matches as we begin this window, they host Uruguay, and then they travel to Quito. That's not going to be easy. How do you see Colombia in these next 2 matches?
Well, first, it's in Barranquilla. And I'm sure
That's right.
You've been in Barranquilla at 3:30 in the afternoon. Is not a good place to be in if you are an athlete, quite frankly. And I've been there with El Pibe. Yeah, I've been there with El Pibe. And he's always, when he walks on the pitch, he always smiles and he looks at me, Coach, this is not easy to play for other teams. I go, okay, El Pibe, fair enough, dude. I'm with you. So that's one. That's a huge advantage, obviously. That's one of the beautiful things about South American qualifier. 18 games, different fields, high altitude, the Barranquilla, the stifling, altitude of Quito, but more so La Paz, what makes it so intriguing. And you're right, Colombia has been a little bit fortunate. Carlos Queiroz, very experienced coach, obviously. I think the key to success for them is Cuadrado. If Cuadrado's willingness to drop deep into midfield when the ball turns over and then is able to get out wide, freeing up James to then play underneath a little bit in a free roll, because you got to build your team somewhat around James Rodriguez, which most coaches have done at Colombia. And you have, obviously, Muriel and Zapata up front. Zapata right now, the starter for sure for this team. But you're right, defensively, this could be a tough one in saying that. And in particular, because Cavani is coming back. So now you got Luis Suarez, who, by the way, scored, 3 or 4 all penalties, but he scored again for his club. Maxi Gomez is not there due to injury. So you would like to think that 4-4-2 with Cavani and Suarez will be there. They miss another important link, in my opinion, in Fede Valverde, who's so good on both sides of the ball. But Uruguay has not looked good. But in saying that, one player could make the difference. And Jimenez coming back, both for Atletico Madrid. By the way, Atletico Madrid is in fuego right now. They're hot. They're going places. And that will be the same thing for this team here. His old partner, Godin's old partner, is back, baby. That makes them, again, a defensive force to be reckoned with. I just wonder where their creative hub is coming from in midfield, because you had Valverde and Betancourt sharing the responsibilities as 6 and 8s and /10. Have teams figured out how to play against Tabares's? And by the way, what a run Tabares has had with Uruguay, obviously, against that 4-4-2. It looked like they've struggled early on. Huge game for both teams, obviously.
Yeah, that's one of the key matchups in this window. As you mentioned, Colombia hosts Uruguay in Barranquilla. One added footnote to Colombia, David Ospina comes back after not being available due to Napoli not allowing any of his players to travel, but he comes back. You mentioned Uruguay seamlessly right there, and let's stick with Uruguay. I am worried about Uruguay. I know it's early.
Me too.
Oscar Tabares is an absolute master, el maestro. We know what he has done for this nation, and we can't forget, if you're new to the World Cup qualifiers in South America, you should know that Uruguay is a tiny nation, and they continue to develop consistency and talent. But I'm worried. I don't know. And Valverde, you mentioned his absence. That's a big one. How do you see this one? Uruguay have to travel to Colombia, and then they host Brazil. So, 2 tough matches here, and they need some wins. How do you see it?
Well, to be real honest with you, I think I agree with you. I think Uruguay will struggle. They might get a draw maybe against Colombia, but then going to Brazil is always tough. This team could potentially look, after round 4 in the bottom, of the table, so to speak. And then the next rounds are not till March of 2021. Also, let's be real honest. The public health crisis, injuries have mounted for all the teams. We just talked about a few, but there's 10 plus big time players that are not part of South American qualifying due to congested schedules, et cetera, which is tough. So these are two huge games for Uruguay, and they need to get some result. I mean, 1 point is possible for this team, which means they're in bad shape going into. They sit there then for the next 4 months wondering, all right, we got to get something in March, or the end of March in 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a note, an edit, that Uruguay host Brazil, but it's still going to be really, really difficult for them. Listen, one team that not many people talk about that much, I want to bring them up. Ecuador is, they've just been, the narrative for Ecuador has always been, Coach, that the talent has always been there. There's no denying that. There's just talent everywhere. They're just tremendous athletes. And unfortunately, most often than not, as it happened in Russia qualifiers, they begin well, but then they start dropping off, whether that's because of the huge window, as you mentioned, the break between the November games and then March, but it's also because of the inconsistency in management and philosophy. But now you look at Ecuador now, they're fifth, 1 win, 1 loss. They have a lot of local talent, right? 4 players from Quito. You have Moises Caicedo, this young player who now plays for Gremio. He's unbelievable. And now you look at these matches. They host, let's see here. No, they travel to Bolivia. So they have to play in La Paz. And then they host Colombia. How do you see Ecuador, a team with a lot of talent who just, as you mentioned at the very beginning, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you feel like sometimes Ecuador forgets that. How do you see Ecuador on this?
I'm very bullish on Ecuador. I actually called the Ecuador-Uruguay game for beIN and saw a team, quite frankly, that clicked that day on all cylinders. And I think that Alfaro, the Argentinian coach, the best thing that could have happened for Jordi Cruyff, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, having to say, I can't be your head coach anymore. They're bringing Alfaro, a experienced club coach from Argentina. And I think their style suits them a little bit. It's a counter-attacking team. They're very athletic, great team speed as well. And if you look at, Ener Valencia, who, by the way, with the next goal could break the goal-scoring record for Ecuador, I am very high on this team. And by the way, for them to travel to La Paz, yes, it's a little higher than Quito. It's not, probably if there's one team out there that should be comfortable in that environment, it's Ecuador. I just think that Farias' men, the Bolivian head coach, you look at Martins, who's their only savior, so to speak, and could make history, by the way, in this game, don't have enough. And I expect Ecuador actually not just to win this game, but also be one of the teams that might go to the 2022 World Cup.
Yeah, I actually have them as a surprise package as well. It's just that they have to remember that this is not a sprint. It's a long, long run, and they have to just stay ready. All right, let's talk about the big one here. Definitely for me, the Pacific Derby. Peru travels to Chile, and there's so many storylines here. From Chile's perspective, Reinaldo Rueda brought a lot of the old school back. He convinced Joan Besojor to come back from retirement. We have Alexis Sanchez and Arturo Vidal taking a private jet to make sure they can make it to the game. We're not so sure on Eric Pulgar because he came a day late, only a day of practice. But this is the old school Chile, the golden generation, reaching their final years, and they host Peru, who they lost to 3-0 in Copa America last year. Peru has a lot of storylines too. They got a lot more players back since the October game. And Gianluca Lapadula, the Italian-Peruvian striker who finally got his DNI in citizenship, he is going to make his debut. We don't know if he'll start or not. But regardless of who it is, this game is just, for those of you don't know, this is it's a derby that comes with historical, political, cultural connotations. And when you put it all on the field, it's just ridiculous. How do you see this game? Let's talk about Chile first. They host Peru, and then they travel to Venezuela, and Peru and Chile are both 1 draw and 1 loss. So how do you see Chile? And then you can go into Peru, Coach.
Yeah, I mean, with Chile, and just going back onto losing a Pacific derby is always bad. But one of them will have 1 point after 3 games if they lose, obviously, if there's no draw in this game. Quick story. I played Chile with my under-20 team in 2007 as a warm-up for the 2007 under-20 World Cup, which was the golden generation, by the way, for Chile. It might have been for the U.S. as well. I had Michael Bradley, Josie Altidore, Freddie Adu, Chet Marshall. I had a pretty darn good team as well. And by the way, we beat Uruguay with Cavani and Suarez in the semifinals of the 2007 World Cup, and beat Brazil too in group play. But Chile on the day were unbelievable. And the one problem I think is there has been no renovation since 2007. If you still have to rely on guys that need to take a private plane because they're too old to take normal flights, so to speak, in Sanchez and Vidal, who are on the day in some of the games they've played pretty darn good still, I think that's a problem. I'm bullish on Peru, regardless of the fact they were unlucky. Actually, both teams were a little unlucky not to get some results. Chile gave up 2 stoppage time goals, by the way, to draw games or to lose one as well. And Peru is better than the scoreline showed against Brazil. I really firmly believe that the winner of this one potentially could go to the World Cup. And I say that Peru will go on the road and will get a result against Chile, your team, your beloved team, that I also very much enjoy. The big question is, you just mentioned, what was it, La Palula?
La Padula.
Their talisman, their leader, Guerrero, is not there. And that's a huge loss for them. Regardless of his age, he brings so much to this team. So where do the goals come from? Is it still your veteran player started in your last game? The number 9 was this
Raul Ruiz.
Or Raul Diaz.
Or Farfan, you're talking about maybe as well.
Yes, exactly. And is Raul Diaz being an MLS? Your number 9 that has to get you to the World Cup, and no disrespect towards MLS. So that's, to me, the question mark. In all other areas, I think they're great. They're 2 fullbacks, love to go forward. Tapias in midfield is sitting in there, orchestrating from deep. It's a fun team to watch, man. You should be proud of being Peruvian.
Oh, I am every day. And I think that was really perfect analysis on both teams, to be honest. I love the story on that golden generation of Chile. Listen, the problem with this game is that it does, listen, like you might as well throw tactics and paper analysis out the window, because it really is down to who wants it more sometimes and who makes the least mistakes during 90 minutes. And when I talk about mistakes, I don't just mean like, I missed opportunity or I missed tackle. I'm talking about fouls, staying mentally ready because things just go out of control when you want it. And you make one really good point. MLS fans should know this. And listen, there's a lot of Peruvian players in MLS, and it's so great to see the league growing. But Raul Ruiz, as well as he does for Seattle Sounders, he does not produce nowhere near what we want him to in Peru. And it's not because a lot of it has to do with strategy. He's just not a sole striker. He's not a guerrero. He's not going to hold the ball from you. He plays off someone. So I'm hoping that maybe you see a Ruiz and La Padula together in a 4-4-2 maybe. But yeah. I don't know. I don't know if Gareca will risk La Padula's first ever game against Chile. I don't know about that.
Welcome to CONMEBOL, La Padula. Here you go. The Pacific Derby. Boom.
Exactly. Here's your introduction to South America, La Padula. Chile away. Forget about it. He won't come back. He'll give back his Peruvian passport, Coach. Let's finish off, Coach, with the 2 teams. I mean, I guess we'll be quick on this. Unfortunately for Bolivia and Venezuela, 0 wins, lost the first straight 2. I think with Venezuela, it was a little unfair as well with not having Salomon Rondon. It was a little tough not having their talisman. He is back, as you mentioned. The Chinese Super League have allowed him to make this travel due to the, obviously South American federations pressured the hell out of some of these teams to make sure they came in. But Bolivia's biggest friend is La Paz. And when you don't play in La Paz, it's might as well be, a negative outcome. I hate to say it, but there's still too much to do. How do you see these last 2 teams? Is there any hope for them to get out of this 9th and 10th spot?
No, I really don't think we're talking about Bolivia right here. Am I correct?
Yeah, Bolivia or Venezuela. You can start with either, Coach.
Yeah, I mean, Venezuela, you're playing at Brazil. So you got no points, you got no goals. So a draw is a win for them, would be very, very tough. Rodon's back, so he might give the back four a little bit of a problem. Brazil, obviously, in midfield, struggling a little bit, but I don't see Venezuela picking up a point, so they'll stay at the bottom of the table as well. And Bolivia, although I had some hopes with this team leading up to the qualifiers. They played some decent football in the Farias, but then you lose at home because you got to pick up your games at home. You know that if you don't pick up not maximum points, but at least quite a few wins and maybe a few draws, but you lose.
Don't lose at home, basically. That's the ultimate message in CONMEBOL. Don't lose at home.
Yeah, and you lose your first game in La Paz against Argentina, who had not won in La Paz for, Bernardo, many, many games. That doesn't speak well for, obviously, the Bolivian team right now. So this is a must-win against a very in fuego, hot Ecuadorian team. I don't expect Bolivia or Venezuela to get out of the bottom, not just for the next few games, but we'll probably be there in March and beyond as well.
Yeah, sadly. Coach, it's been amazing talking to you. Let me ask you one last question. We have some great games. Chile, Peru, Colombia, Uruguay, Uruguay, Brazil. I mean, there's so many fun ones. If I keep looking down here, Peru, Argentina is a fun one as well. Is there one game that you're just like, that one, my friends, you gotta either watch it or DVR it? Which one is it?
It's going to be the, I don't know how you say it in Espanol, but Derby El Pacifico, eh? Vamos, dale, Chile, Peru. That's the game, my man. As you said, throw all the tactics out the window. Forget about X's and O's. It's about which team will cry the most during the national anthem before the game because they love their countries. They put their hearts on that crest that you're wearing right now and say, I will die for my country. That's the game I want to see, baby.
I love it. And we will end it right there. Thomas Rongen, TR. You can watch him on CBS Sports HQ weekdays, especially during Champions League and Europa weeks. It's always a pleasure, TR, to have you here. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Luis. And how do you say gold standard? Que golazo is the gold standard.
Que golazo. Es el estilo de oro. El estilo de oro.
El estilo de oro. Vamos, dale. Ciao.
I want to thank TR for joining me today. Make sure that you follow us on Que Golazo Pod. And if you listen to us on cbssports.com, please come to Apple Podcasts, come to Spotify, come to Stitcher, leave a rating and review. We need it. We love it. We want it. Have a great weekend if you hear this closer to the Friday, and we will see you next time.